What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. It's Monday morning, Memorial Day, and we are talking some baseball 8-game slate, little spread out, little bit of some weather issues, but heating up around the country. First day of summer, you could say, JT. And ready to talk some baseball. How you doing on this Memorial Day Monday morning?
Doing good, warming up. Certainly a warm weekend in the Run Pure Sports Discord. Congrats to you. Good to see you feeling better. Very nice lineup there in a single bullet on Saturday. And we'll see. Like you said, there's some weather issues here. It's a little bit of a trickier slate because you've got some really popular pitchers against teams that I normally don't pick on. And that makes it a little bit more interesting because there's not a lot of other options, right? You've got Nick Lodolo, who people were talking about in Discord, but he's coming off the IL. We don't know exactly what they're going to be doing with him. You've got a couple of other pitchers with weather, Cole Irvin, who's being stretched out, Tyler McGill, who is now back to being a starter in a very tough matchup. So if you want to get off of some of this popular plays at pitcher, the Mortons, the Ryans, Chris Bassett, which I guess makes some sense. It's a little challenging to find pivots, so we'll dig in and see what we can find here today.
Yeah, I was up early today. Just after the Wolves game, just straight to bed. Tried to sleep it off. Up early, researching baseball, and the pitching options on the slate. It was sometimes you look through the slate, right? You maybe look at early projections and a couple guys stand out to you. You dig in a little further and you're like, all right, I got 3 or 4 or 5 pitchers that I like. I don't necessarily need to dig in all the way to every single pitcher. This slate was not one of those, right? It's kind of I'm still looking for 2 guys that I want to roster. And like you said, even the guys that like a Charlie Morton, right? An okay spot, but it's like 90 degrees in Atlanta and the wind's blowing out to left field. And he's not that, and he's super chalk. He's not a pitcher you want to trust anyway. Joe Ryan, again, not a bad spot, but some weather issues against a team that doesn't strike out that much. He's expensive. And so it was one of those slates where I was kind of trying to look for if I could find, I don't know, like a 4K reliever that was, more or less guaranteed to pitch and take your, 6 points or whatever, save the cap and load up on bat. So it is a strange slate in that respect. But, we've all got the same player pool, same guys to choose from, and we'll have winners at the top of tournaments regardless. So, let's jump into it. We don't, of course, have many lineups yet. I think we have the lineups for the first 3 games. It is a spread out slate in general. Just the one game, Boston-Baltimore at 1:00 Eastern time. We got to wait an hour for 2 more games and then 2 more hours for the other 5 games on the slate.
Yeah.
So
you've got 3 games in an earlier window between 1 and 2:10 or 1:05 and 2:10, and then the rest of the slate. And to your point about pitching, when you're comparing the merits of Nick Nastrini versus Austin Gomber, it's a little thin. It's a little thin when you're talking about those guys as potentially being guys that you're going to invest heavily in. So certainly an interesting slate for that.
VIP coming in hot today. The entire state of Minnesota is full of losers. Okay, it's a little harsh.
Well, we've got coordinators. Matty Ice is from the state of Minnesota. We've got a lot of subs. One of my favorite subs, Jerker, is from the state of Minnesota. VIP, retract that statement with your, no ACLs or whatever nonsense you were telling us last night in Discord. VIP, he's a great storyteller. 2 weeks ago, he comes in to Discord and he says that his neighbors say, because they're friendly with Grayson Rodriguez's parents, that he's on a strict pitch limit of 60. And Rodriguez goes out and throws 88. So I don't believe anything that comes out of VIP's mouth. I love him. He's great. He's a showman. It's fantastic. But listen, be nice to the people in Minnesota. Please.
Have we actually confirmed that VIP is like a real person? He doesn't show up.
He's never been at any events. Never been at any events. Comes in with those pictures that, on Google. I don't know.
Yeah. He's always posting pictures of his big ass mansion down in Texas. Yeah. I got a feeling VIP might be living in maybe he's in mom's basement. Maybe VIP is making some shit up there.
Yeah. AP's giving us shit. Yeah. Oh my god! All right, he retracted his statement. All right. So
yeah, we bullied him into the retraction. That's good stuff. All right, but enough bullshitting around. Let's get into these games. First one we'll talk about: Boston Red Sox, Baltimore Orioles. 9 total in this one. Common theme on this slate is going to be weather, both, like scary weather spots. This one, it could be rainy. I'm seeing potential rain kind of all day in Baltimore. I do think this game will play, but we're going to have to monitor it, right? We're going to have to make this call closer to game time. I think the pitchers are, as always, as usual, more risky than the hitters. But assuming it does play, I mean, this is going to be a very friendly environment, right? So we've got weather issues a lot of places, but again, also good hitting weather. If it does play, 85 degrees, 60% humidity, which helps the ball fly, and pretty strong winds, like straight out to center field, in Baltimore. So obviously with the left field cut out there, hard to hit home runs for right-handers, but to center and to right field, ball's going to be jumping. We could see home runs here. We've got Cole Irvin on the mound for Baltimore. He's 7,600. Has actually pitched pretty well this year for the most part, but is coming off 2 duds against St. Louis and Seattle, who aren't the greatest hitting teams in the world. And kind of building himself up, it looks like. Yeah. So he threw. What's the deal there? He threw 13 pitches, only against the Mariners on the 19th, and then 56. But
he's back in the rotation because John Means left the game, and I think so. He's injured, so he's taking Means' spot. And go ahead and finish, and then we'll talk about the pitching.
They moved him to the bullpen. He's building back up. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So healthy, just building back up, which I'm kind of surprised. I mean, he was pitching pretty well. I'm kind of surprised that they kicked him out of the rotation. I guess just had to make room. 56 pitches back on the 22nd. So what are you thinking here? 70-ish pitches, 75?
Probably enough where he's in the discussion, right? Enough where he's a potential pivot. Just because, like you said, he's not a big strikeout guy, but he is a quality pitcher. And this Boston team has been really more boom bust than anything else. Kind of prefer them, I think, against right-handed pitchers. So definitely in the discussion. On the other side of this, Cooper Criswell, I keep expecting him to be bad, but Boston's starting pitchers have been, for the most part, surprisingly very, very good. So even though there's weather here, it's normally a more pitcher-friendly park until the weather warms up. Now you have some wind, and I think to the point you were making about weather, I think that's really more why I won't be considering pitching very much in this one. Not really sure exactly how that's going to go. I have to check radar here before lock.
Yeah, like I said, I have kind of dug into most of these pitchers, and Criswell was kind of a last cut, right? I mean, on a normal slate against Baltimore, in good hitting conditions, like I wouldn't really be considering a $7,800 Criswell. It's just that type of day where you kind of got to consider anybody. I mean, like I would lock either of these guys in my lineup for 15 fantasy points, right? It's just you're not going to win probably via pitching today. You're just trying to get away with it mostly is kind of where I'm at. So I think they're okay plays. I'm not playing 150 today, just five lineups for me. I don't think either of these guys will make the cut. What about offenses here, JT? Orioles were good to me on Saturday. And, ball should be flying here for these left-handed hitters for the Orioles. I know Criswell has pitched well so far. I do think he's certainly capable of getting blown up at any time. It would seem like the regression would come for him. I do kind of like these Orioles lefties, but they're expensive for sure. Red Sox bats, Orioles bats, any interest on either team here?
I have more interest in Baltimore for the reasons we talked about, right? Cole Irvin is a not soft tossing, but he's a control quality left-handed pitcher, which means he's going to want to keep guys off balance. And you got a lot of young hitters in this Boston lineup that I think he can do that too. I haven't seen, I know Tyler O'Neill came out of a game over the weekend. So obviously we'll take a look at the lineup here. I'd be chasing more power against Irvin, but definitely more interest in the Orioles. I think there's later games that I'm a little bit more interested in maybe. But Orioles are definitely in the pool for their power upside.
Yeah, I like Orioles' chances to hit some home runs here. Those lefties, Henderson, Rushman, O'Hearn, Cowser, even Kyle Stowers is 2,200 down there in the 7-hole. Need to look up the Boston bullpen situation because there is some pinch hit risk, of course, with some of those guys.
Yeah, this is not a great Red Sox lineup. So Duran, Ref Snyder in the 2-hole, Connor Wong, Devers, but then you've got Garrett Cooper, Romy Gonzalez, Vaughn Grissom, who hasn't hit since the minor leagues, Dominic Cheeks, who hit his home run of the season the other day, and then Ceddanne Rafaela. So it's actually a pretty good lineup for Cole Irvin if you wanted to play him and take your chances that he gets 5 and bolts with a win.
Yeah.
So that's. That's the type of lineup.
It really is a pretty ugly looking lineup for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
So like Cole Irvin, maybe in play. Might dig in more and see if I can find anything more concrete about his pitch count. But he was obviously a traditional starter. So
I'd have a lot of interest.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to the next game. This one at 2:10 Eastern Time, Minnesota, Kansas City. This is another game with real weather concerns on whether or not this game is going to play at all, and whether or not there'll be an in-game delay. Rain in and around the area in Minneapolis. And you do have, I think probably the safest pitcher on this slate, I think it's fair to say, is Joe Ryan at 10.3K. Obviously a pretty damn good arm. He's got a really, really strong history against this Kansas City Royals team. I don't, put too much stock into that, but honestly, where the pitching is tough, you're kind of looking for anything to push you in one direction or the other, and that certainly doesn't hurt. Ryan, he's a good, not great strikeout arm. Strikeout totals last 5 games 6, 5, 7, 5, 3, which isn't great, honestly, for a 10.3K pitcher, right? This Royals team has been doing damage. They don't strike out that much anyway, the team. So I don't honestly love Joe Ryan here at 10.3K, even if this game looks safe, which I don't know if it's going to. But like I said, I do think he's probably the safest option. I think if I had, pick one pitcher that, the most likely to give you 15 plus fantasy points, I think it would be Joe Ryan for me. But I don't know if he's got massive upside here. Will be pretty cool in Minneapolis, 60 degrees, some winds blowing out. So one of the better pitching environments on the slate. This is, I believe, the lowest total on the slate, sitting at 7.5. Royals have the lowest team total of any team, down at 3.3, 3.4 runs, something like that. So Joe Ryan, obviously in play. I do think he'll be popular if the weather looks okay. And then Alec Marsh on the other side, not really a pitcher I've been on much of this season, but frankly, I've kind of missed out. He's been pretty good at some good price points. Still relatively cheap in that mid-range at 8K. He's going to give you probably close to 100 pitches most times out. And, this Twins lineup isn't great. It's one that you certainly can target with opposing pitching. So I think Ryan and Marsh are both in play, assuming the weather looks okay. But you throw in the weather risk and kind of high price tags, and neither of them are super exciting, but they both are on kind of my, willing to play pitchers on this slate. And I don't know about you. I don't have a ton of interest in the bats here. I just think I think almost every spot on the slate, frankly, is a better spot for hitting than this one. So I won't be going to these hitters, but what about Ryan, Marsh? Obviously depends on the weather, but assuming it looks okay, how much interest do you have in these guys?
So on Joe Ryan, there's one scientific thing and one unscientific thing that gives me a little bit of concern. The scientific reason is he's been entirely inconsistent this year, as have, quite honestly, all of these Twins pitchers. From start to start, it's been a roller coaster with these guys.
Yeah, Pablo Lopez in particular. Yeah.
Well, Pablo, I think there's got to be something mechanically that's wrong with him. They're going to have to fix that. Clearly, we saw yesterday once again just giving up a ton of power and a ton of base runners. So, and I think they will. He's too good a pitcher for that not to happen. But I'm not going to play him while he's in the 9Ks, mid 9s, high 10s. When you look at Ryan, the market is significantly overvaluing what he's done game to game. Juiced K-prop to the over, a heavy favorite to get into the sixth inning. And I just don't love the spot. I mean, these Royals, DC, have become a team where you want to play them at low ownership because they have maybe one of the 5 or 6 teams in Major League Baseball, the opportunity any given day, any given game, to have 5 or 6 hitters put up 20 plus fantasy points. So I'm going to lean towards, I'm definitely going to play the Royals. We'll see what the weather looks like. You want to play a 10K pitcher where there's a 60% chance of an in-game delay. I don't really want to, especially not when he's going to be 40% owned. So I'm going to be taking a look at that closer to lock. He's definitely not going to be my highest owned arm. I will tell you that. Marsh has pitched well, but his expected ERA is a full run higher than his actual ERA. This is a game where if you see an early delay, you could get into the middle of these bullpens, which is where you want to be as an opposing offense. So I think it's an interesting low-owned spot on both sides to take some risks from the offenses and be underweight on the pitching.
Yeah, this one, if you do go to the pitching, it's one you're going to have to literally look at the radar and try to predict when the storms are, or, look at the forecast and see, is there a window here for a Joe Ryan or an Alec Marsh to throw 5 or 6 innings? Because there might not be, right? They might start this game and it's too far out to say exactly, but there's a chance that they're going to start it, and then there's clearly going to be rain in the 3rd or 4th inning or something like that. Yeah. And then it's pretty rare. And listen, the Twins are very cautious with their pitchers. I would be surprised to see Joe Ryan come back out after a rain delay in the 3rd or 4th inning. He would almost certainly be out of the game for good. So
it would have to be one of those, quick passes over the stadium, 15, like what we saw in Pittsburgh on Saturday, where they brought Keller back out. Yeah. Just because it was like a 20-minute delay. I just wanted to highlight this because it's something that Mangone talked about the other day about stacking the Twins. And I've started to do this year. I didn't do it in years past. I go through them and I basically decide by taking a look at the other team's bullpen who I think they're going to bring in if they have a bunch of opposite-handed hitters or pitchers, And then I'll cross off some of these guys. Now, Julian's a guy I won't cross off just because of the power and his offensive capability, but Kyle Farmer, he's not in the lineup today. I'm not playing him, but this isn't. I guess Kirilloff and Larnach, right, are the 2 guys, and I think I would lean Kirilloff more than Larnach here. You don't want to. I mean, it's a good point. You don't want to have a ton of 5-man Twins, but certainly Jeffers, Correa, Kepler right now. Castro always stays in the game. So I think those guys are fairly safe.
Yeah, the Royals do have 3 lefties in the pen, and all 3 almost certainly available to pitch today. So we will almost certainly see some pinch hitting shenanigans from the Twins today. Feels like a near certainty, 6, 7 inning type of thing. Those guys.
And Kansas City is also one of those teams. We talked about this over the weekend last week when Arizona was playing the Dodgers. The sharper teams, I believe the sharper teams, they're just kind of toying with these organizations that can't help themselves. And so you see them do this purposefully to screw with their starting lineups, to get them to move hitters around. It's fantastic what Torey Lovullo does to Dave Roberts every single time the Diamondbacks play the Dodgers. Go on.
All right, let's get to the second game kind of in this early, or the last game, I guess, in this early window. Toronto and the Chicago White Sox. This game will be good to go in terms of, just playing the game. But it does look like pretty extreme hitting conditions here. 70 degrees, humid, and strong winds blowing straight out to center field in the White Sox park. should play very, very well for home runs, especially given who's on the mound here. Nick Nastrini pitching for the Chicago White Sox, averaging negative fantasy points on the season. Never good to see through 3 starts. And he did face the same Toronto team in his last start 5 days ago. Gave up 9 runs over 3 1/3 innings, recorded 0 strikeouts, walked 6 guys. We've seen this Jays lineup kind of come to life over the last week or two. Put up 11 runs in a loss yesterday. But yeah, Nastrini doesn't miss any bats. Obviously, the Jays saw him, crushed him again. And I mean, I don't love the Jays just as an offense or whatever, but it's hard not to like him here against Nick Nastrini in this prime hitting conditions. White Sox obviously have a pretty terrible bullpen behind him. So the Jays look good. And kind of pains me to say this, the White Sox look okay too. Now, Chris Bassett pitching for Toronto, I think he could end up being one of the higher-owned pitchers on the slate. Sabres got him right around 22% at the moment. I'll take the over on that number and frankly, in all contests on DraftKings, just because, the price isn't bad at 8,200. And, despite the good hitting weather, the White Sox do have one of the lower team totals on this slate, sitting around 3.7. It was Bassett and Nastrini who, did battle that in that game 5 days ago. And Bassett pitched well, 7 shutout innings. Now, he only got 4 strikeouts, but, I would expect a couple more than that, maybe 5-6 strikeouts for Bassett. We know how bad this White Sox offense is. And Bassett's been going pretty deep into games. Threw 107 pitches last time out, but has been over 100 for 3 straight starts. You could, spin that a couple of ways. You could spin it that maybe, this is a start where they try to save him a little bit, but the Toronto bullpen has been bad. They burned through pretty much their entire bullpen yesterday in that crazy 14-11 game against the Tigers. So I don't think this is the game where they kind of let off the gas on Bassett. I think they asked him to go as long as he can go in this one. I would expect, frankly, at least 90 and probably, frankly, over 100 pitches again for Chris Bassett against the White Sox. He's going to be popular, but he's got to be on the short list, I think, at 8,200. His big problem is power given up to lefties. White Sox don't really have any of it. I mean, Gavin Sheets, in theory, is a power hitter. In practice, though, once he got a couple home runs on the year, he really hasn't done anything, at least when I've played him. So I think Bassett should be okay here. And okay is enough on pitching on this slate, in my opinion. So I like Chris Bassett. There's no way I can play Nick Nastrini. And, yeah, you got to like Toronto here. I know it seems like they've got a long tradition of letting people down when they're chalk. But it does seem like they're swinging better bats. So I do have interest in the Blue Jays. I'm sure, as Steven says, I would expect the Jays to be pretty chalky in this one. They're not that expensive. Highest price guy is Vladimir Guerrero sitting at $5K. Everybody else below that mark, obviously. So, yeah. In on really both sides of the Blue Jays here, pitching and hitting. What about you, JT?
Yeah, like you said, it's tough not to like him against Nastrini, who's a kid who's pitching out of necessity on the worst baseball team in Major League Baseball right now. And
how bad, by the way, is this White Sox team going to be when they're going to trade everybody?
They're going to trade, yeah. Pham is going to be gone. Guys that we don't really play a lot, like the
anyone with any value. Pham's going to be gone. Eloy, I think they've got a good chance to trade Robert. It's going to be wild how bad this line's going to be. But anyway, go ahead.
Eloy and Robert. They got to get on the field first in order for someone to have interest. But this is a classic. So Bassett, he's got the highest outs prop on the slate. He's got a decent strikeout prop for an 8-2 pitcher. I do think the Sox will get them a little bit today, but you mentioned that game yesterday. It was 14-13 or something like that. People in Discord were like, oh, we wish this game was on the slate. I'm like, no, you don't, because none of you would have played it. And the crying about Chris Sale after giving up 1 run in the second inning would have been completely dwarfed by, why didn't I play the Tigers? So I think it's hard not to be interested in the Jays. They're showing some pretty massive ownership, though. So it's tempting to look elsewhere, and I am looking elsewhere. But I'll definitely have some Jays in the pool, and I do think you can pick off mini stacks of the Sox here. And then DC, look, it's baseball. If the White Sox get to Bassett to the point where they have to pull him, or he wears one and gives up 7 earned runs, there is nothing in that bullpen. The White Sox don't do that often. But, I mean, is it within the realm of possibility? It is, especially when I think Bassett's going to be 35% owned.
Yeah, it does look like the White Sox use mostly all their right-handers. Yeah, they pitched 5 guys out of the bullpen, all of the righties. Neither of their lefties pitched yesterday. So those guys, if Bassett gets knocked out early, will probably be coming into the game. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Chris Bassett. He's fully capable of getting blown out, especially in a game with the wind blowing out. So, I think you could play both sides of it. I will definitely have some Chris Bassett in my lineups. Just because of kind of the nature of the slate. But I don't hate the White Sox stacks if you want to go in that direction. We'll keep it moving to the 5 later games. First one we'll talk about Dodgers and Mets, another game with some weather issues. Again, I do think these games, frankly, all of them are going to play, but we don't know that for sure. Obviously, this game is, long time out at this point, 4.5 hours till this game starts. So no lineups for any of these later games quite yet. But we do know Gavin Stone pitching for the Dodgers, right-hander, obviously. He's been pretty good, all stretched out and everything. The Mets are a low strikeout team, but Gavin Stone at 8,400, I think has to be in play. And then Tyler McGill pitching for the Mets, made just 2 starts this year. He pitched back in March, then was on the injured list for 2 months almost. Came back against Cleveland, looked pretty good in that start. I did watch that start, he looked strong. 7 strikeouts over 5 innings through 86 pitches. So he's essentially a full go at this point. Obviously, don't love picking on the Dodgers, but 7,500 McGill, I think he's in play. I think both these guys are at least worthy of consideration. Pretty modest total in this one, sitting at 8.5. Over to you, JT, for Dodgers and Mets. What do you got for us?
It's tough to break this one down because, first of all, there's some significant weather here in the New York area. And this game looks, of all the games, probably the most dangerous in my eyes, to where I think it's hard to consider pitchers when you're looking at an almost certain delay of some point, whether it's if they delay and late start. This is something that, your friend Kevin Roth pointed out. But there is weather early and then there's weather late in New York. Now, the Dodgers do come back to play the Yankees. I believe that's in July. I didn't look to see where the Mets were at that time, but they are here. This is the first of a 3-game series. So all things being equal, yes, I would have interest in McGill. Certainly we saw what Logan Webb did against the Mets yesterday. I would have had some interest in Gavin Stone, but I think because of the weather, at least right now, I'm going to be treating this game as a stay away. Maybe I'll throw a couple of 5-man stacks of the Dodgers in there just in case it plays. But it doesn't look very good right now.
It's another game where you're going to have to make a call probably closer to the time that the game starts. I will say, JT, probably the approach that many people are taking today is just writing this game off, right? Oh, there's weather issues. It's Memorial Day. I'm sure a lot of people are, as soon as the slate locks or whatever, going to head out to whatever they're doing today and, maybe not want to have to worry about swapping off some of these weather games. So if it does look okay by the time I do think this game will play. So I think hitters probably are going to be safe. But, the pitchers, nobody's going to play these guys. So, again, I can't say right now, 4.5 hours before game time, whether or not I'm going to play them either because we just have no idea. But I do think both of these pitchers will be, neither of them is going to get that much ownership anyway. But they'll be very, very low owned given the weather concerns. So, it's just something, if you do have, if you can check, if you are around your computer or whatever, there's going to be some some big decisions to be made just in terms of the weather, in terms of where you go. So that's the Dodgers and the Mets. Like you said, 5-man stacks. If you're worried about the weather, like we always recommend on any given lineup, you might as well just kind of full send it on the game, because if you get a couple guys rained out, you're probably not winning a GPP anyway. So something to keep in mind there. Let's go to St. Louis and Cincinnati next. This game should be rain-free, at least for the most part, at least enough to play the game. No worries with the weather here. It is going to play extremely hitter-friendly, though, if either team can just get the ball in the air. This is already the best home run park in baseball in Cincinnati in general, and it will certainly play that way today. 80 degrees, humid, winds blowing out to left field in Great American Ballpark. And, ball will be flying. Any well-struck fly ball has got a good chance of getting over the fence. In this one, we've got Lance Lynn on the hill for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's actually been okay this year for the most part. Still a guy that I want to pick off some hitters against. Elly De La Cruz, I think, in particular, is an amazing spot here. I'll take the lefties in general against Lynn. You want power, of course. He gives up a lot of fly balls. You can run on him, too, giving up 7 steals already this year. Looks like an amazing spot for Mr. Cruz. And then the Cardinals are interesting, too. Nick Lodolo going to pitch here for Cincinnati. He's 9,800, second highest priced pitcher on the slate. Coming off a minor injury, right? A groin injury, 15 days off. Looks like he's, missed essentially the minimum amount of time through a bullpen session on Wednesday. I think he should be mostly good to go here. He did throw 98 pitches back in his last outing as well. They've mostly let him go into the 90s in pitch count for most of his games. Again, I haven't seen anything concrete, but I do think – if you had to put a pitch count on Lodolo, 85, something like that, I think would be a decent guess. And listen, it's a dangerous spot, right? Pitching in Great American Ballpark, any lineup can do damage here. But Lodolo does have a lot of strikeout upside. When he's on his game, he can miss bats. I think the pitcher that he reminds me of the most, honestly, is Chris Sale, right? Kind of a tall, lanky lefty. Little bit of a lower release point on the pitches, it's kind of sidearmish, good slider, all that good stuff from Lodolo. He's in play at 9,800. I think he might go kind of low owned because the Cardinals and Reds both have big team totals here. You understand why with the stadium they're pitching in, but if Lodolo's missing bats, that doesn't necessarily come into play. So I do personally think Lodolo has the most strikeout upside of any pitcher on this slate, which puts him in play, even at that $9,800 price tag. Again, I don't think he's safe. Some worries with the injury. Obviously, the park. Cardinals lineup coming alive a little bit. Paul Goldschmidt, 2 home runs yesterday, I think. So, I could see playing either side of it, but I do lean the Lodolo side. I do think he has the most upside of any pitcher on the slate. I don't think I can get to Lance Lynn here, but I don't think he's the craziest play at 7,200. Obviously, a strikeout-heavy Cincinnati team, worries about keeping the ball in the yard. But, you could give up a home run or two and still be on the winner at 7,200 if you can get 5, 6, 7 strikeouts. So, interesting one here, JT, where I honestly think both offenses and both pitchers are in play. Just one of those games for me. What about you, Cincinnati and St. Louis?
Yeah, I'm not going to be on Lance Lynn here. I think – whether it's running around the bases or the power in the Cincinnati lineup, I'm pretty heavy, pretty high on Cincy bats here in this spot. The Cardinals played Sunday Night Baseball, 2.5-hour rain delay, so that game got started pretty late. Then after that game, they pick up and they fly into Cincinnati. So a long night for the Cardinals. And, Lodolo, I think it was the first start of the season I was concerned about a pitch count, and they let him go. He threw 90, 91 pitches. I
remember that. I wanted to play him, and I was worried about the pitch count too. Yep.
And I think Mangone was the only one who actually jumped on him in that first start, and he pitched an absolute gem. So I like Lodolo here I'm showing about 10% ownership on him right now. So I think that is really good to perhaps even invert the Joe Ryan ownership and play Ryan at 10 and play Lodolo at 40 or something like that. That's something I'm considering. And obviously, if I'm doing that, I'm not very high on the Cardinals bats today. So high on Cincy bats. I'll be playing Lodolo. No Lance Lynn for me on this slate.
I'll be mixing in some one-offs from the Cardinals. Goldschmidt, Arenado, guys that can hit lefties. Maybe a Mason Wynn, assuming he's leading out at 3,200. I don't think I'm going to go with the full stack against Lodolo, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gave up a home run or two here. So I'll be playing both sides of it. Probably with you. I don't think I'm playing Lance Lynn here, and I will be getting as much De La Cruz in my lineup as I can. Very expensive, obviously, but do want him as if I can afford it on any teams. Brings us to the Nationals and the Braves. Of course, the Braves lost Ronald Acuna. Bummer for me. Just love watching him play. Obviously, was a slow start to the season. I don't know if you watched the game, JT, but yeah, just he was on second base, was kind of dancing off, looking to steal third, pivoted back to second, and just the ACL went his second ACL injury to the other leg. What was that? 3 or 4 years ago. Just a bummer to see him go down for the year. He owes me some money. I was planning on him paying me back for not delivering, but he is out. Looks like I think they're gonna probably just let Kelenic play in the outfield. Duvall, Kelenic, I think will kind of pick up the slack there. And yeah, the beat goes on for the Atlanta Braves. They did rebound and had one of their best hitting days of the season yesterday after Acuna went down. So I'm not really worried about, I think maybe some people say, the Braves are going to be, down and out after this. They're professional hitters. I don't think they're going to throw away at bats just after losing their star. They certainly didn't yesterday. I think the Braves certainly in play against Mitchell Parker, who, I don't know, GT, I kind of throw him in that Criswell bucket where I keep expecting him to get lit up, and so far at least it hasn't really happened. He hasn't pitched super great, and he's not a high strikeout guy, but he's been okay. He's 6,500. I don't think I can quite get to Mitchell Parker. Very, very extremely good hitting conditions in Atlanta. Hot, humid, wind blowing out to left field. And so I do think these Braves bats, Albies, Ozuna, of course. Sean Murphy, I think did he get activated? I haven't seen officially, but I think he might be in the lineup today at 3,500. So I'd be interested in playing him. Hit a couple home runs in his rehab games. He got injured on the first day of the season, so it's been almost 2 months now without Sean Murphy. But he'd be an interesting play, I think, if he's in there. Duvall is 3,300. He's got power. Homered yesterday. So I do like this Braves team, and sports are weird sometimes, JT, where, you would expect the Acuna injury to kind of hurt this Braves offense. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a continuation of what we saw yesterday and everybody kind of picks up the slack around, the fallen star. So I am on the Braves here. And then Charlie Morton, who has been pretty good for the most part this year. I think he could potentially be the most popular pitcher on the slate, which isn't something you normally say about Morton, and frankly isn't something I'm all that comfortable with, especially against the Nationals team, who not the laughing stock maybe they were expected to be. I believe they'll get Lane Thomas back for this game as well. I think some of these Nationals bats, Luis Garcia has been a guy. I saw him in your core, I think yesterday. I played him on my winning lineup on Saturday. I really like what I've seen from him. You can run on Morton a little bit too. So Morton's going to be popular. I get why, but I don't think he is some slam dunk by any stretch here. Where do you stand, JT, on Braves and Nationals?
Yeah, first of all, a couple of places you are talking about weather, and it's going to be fine here as far as the forecast.
Yep.
In Atlanta after about 1:30. This game doesn't start until 4:00, so don't expect any weather issues here. The thing with first of all, Morton's always, at least last several seasons, been better at home. You really feel more comfortable about him at home than on the road. This Nationals team, they don't strike out though, and you're not getting any discount on Charlie Morton. 8,600. They got a great start from Chris Sale yesterday, so the bullpen's rested. It's a spot where I think you come in a little bit under the field on Morton here. Not that I think that the Nationals are going to do a ton of damage, but I think there's a few less strikeouts in this Washington lineup. So as far as the Braves, Mitch Parker's pitched pretty well, but I just don't know if this is a spot that I'm going to go to him here on this slate. We'll see. If so, it's going to be very, very minimal shares just because the Braves really haven't been offensively doing much. Like you said, they broke out yesterday. Martin Perez leaves that game early. You get to the Pirates bullpen. And of course, if they could get to Mitchell Parker here, they're going to get into a very soft Washington Nationals bullpen. So definitely on the list in terms of stacks are the Atlanta Braves, but not sure exactly how much I end up with.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of lineup the Braves roll out there. Obviously, kind of depends on Murphy. Who do you think slides into the leadoff spot? I'm seeing Arcia projected some spots. That feels like would be a strange choice.
What they've done in the past is, and these are games where Acuna hasn't played. I'm talking the last season and a half, right? He hasn't missed, other than injury, he hasn't missed that many.
He missed like 3 or 4 games total, probably in the last season.
Yeah. Well, earlier this season, when he missed earlier this season, it was Arcia against lefties and Michael Harris against righties. So they're going to do a platoon. If it's the same, they'll do a platoon in the leadoff spot until there's some other change. So that's what I expect from them.
Yeah, Arcia, the projected leadoff hitter. So he would be an interesting play, I think, at 3,500, assuming that does prove true. National side, Garcia, my favorite play, followed by Abrams. Edwin Rosario hitting right now, 3,500. I don't mind these guys, frankly, against Charlie Morton, especially since we know he is going to be a popular play. I am seeing a lot of people in chat discussing Lodolo, potentially not. I'm pretty sure Lodolo is pitching this game. I know like Sabres got him listed out or something like that, but I do expect Lodolo to be in there. I'm certainly, building lineups as if he will pitch. So that's my take on that. Let's get to Coors Field, Colorado and the Cleveland Guardians. Highest total on the slate, sitting at 10.5. No surprise there. Pretty nice day here in Colorado. Austin Gomber on the mound for the Rockies. He's actually pitched well this year. Back-to-back 25-point outings. Now, both of those were on the road. He has been better on the road overall. Again, no surprise. I don't really expect – that's even too mild. I don't expect Austin Gomber to continue this good run of pitching, especially at home. The Guardians – they've been a really good team all year long. David Fry has emerged as one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. He's 5K, but I think worth every penny. Jose Ramirez having a monster year. Naylor, Jimenez, Freeman up top. You got to like this Guardians team, or at least I do, against Austin Gomber. I'm sure they'll be very popular, and there are plenty of places to go today. But I do think the Guardians send Gomber to regression land and put a little dent in that pristine ERA he's rocking a third of the way through the season. So I'm in on the Guardians. They're expensive, of course, but I do think they will likely prove worth it today. And then Xavier Curry pitching for Cleveland. He's got good numbers on the year, too. 66 pitches in his last outing back on May 21st. Had been in the minor leagues prior to that. Carlos Carrasco went on the IL. So, Gavin Williams on the IL, Shane Bieber. So he's kind of pitching out of necessity as well for the Guardians. I like the Rocky side of this one, too. Not a big believer in Xavier Curry. Problem is, none of these Rockies are super inspiring. Ryan McMahon would be the number one bet I would play there. And honestly, if I'm playing Rockies, though, it's probably just a full-on stack. Hoping this game goes full Coors Field. JT, where do you stand on Rockies and Guardians?
Yeah, so these are two pitchers who've gotten essentially every single break go their way over the course of this season. Austin Gomber, 88% of runners left on base, an expected ERA nearly 2 full runs higher than his actual ERA. Xavier Curry, 93% of runners left on base, and an expected ERA of DC only 4 runs higher than his actual ERA. So I think there's some regression to come for both of these guys. On the Rockies side, though, you did not mention Zeke Tovar, who has been just phenomenal. So Tovar, McMahon, Elias Diaz, Brendan Rodgers, Brenton Doyle. Those are guys that I find interesting here. Everyone knows about the back of the Guardians bullpen, but if you get into the middle of really almost any bullpen in Major League Baseball, you're going to find some attackable pieces. So especially at altitude, I think this game is interesting. This is a slate where I'm going to be on the offenses. Both of these offenses, whereas there's a lot of slates where I don't do that at Coors Field, but I do think today is a day to play Guardians and Rockies. So definitely out on the pitchers and in on the offenses.
Yeah, the Guardians have played a couple close games recently. So Clase has pitched 2 days in a row. And they've kind of used most of their good relievers over the last couple of days. Looks like it could be Nick Sandlin, who pitches out of the bullpen. He hasn't pitched in 4 days. They've used most of their other guys fairly recently. So, yeah, offenses look good here. And I do think the Colorado side looks particularly interesting. They will be today, and they almost always are, the lower-owned team in Coors Field. Everybody wants to jump at the team that, only gets to play 1 or 2 series there. And that'll be the case again today. So, the more we look at it, the more I do like the Rockies offense in this game. Good call on Tovar, McMahon. Really, anybody in that Colorado lineup, I think, is probably a pretty strong play today. All right, last game of the slate. Hit the like button if you haven't yet done so. Spend a whole 10 seconds begging for likes today, JT. There you go. Chicago and the Milwaukee Brewers. We've got Robert Gasser pitching for the Brewers. I think he was supposed to pitch yesterday, or originally was scheduled to, but pushed him to Monday. He's been okay. Did have a rough start against Miami. Pitched well against Pittsburgh and St. Louis. So he has had a very favorable pitching schedule in his 3 starts. But he's looked okay to me. Been right around 80 pitches, though, in all 3 of his starts. So really hard to – he's made it through 6 in 2 of those starts. He really hasn't allowed much hard contact. I think, though, that could be partly because of just the competition, the opposing bats that he's faced. 7,100, though, I think he's at least worth considering. This game essentially a toss-up, 8 total in Milwaukee, and then Justin Steele pitching for the Cubs. He just had that awesome year last year. He was like the Cy Young favorite heading into September. Kind of fell apart down the stretch, though. And then this year's been a bit of a rough ride. He's had some injuries, got hurt, I believe, on opening day, came back in early May, has made 4 starts since then. It's been pretty, frankly, mediocre in those starts. 7K, though, for Steele, for a pitcher who is not far removed from a very, very strong season last year. Again, I don't love picking on this Milwaukee team, but Steele at 7K, I think he's got to be in play, JT. He did get up to 93 pitches, season high for him in his last outing against the Braves. Your thoughts here on Steele, Gasser, Cubs, and Brewers?
Yeah, Steele has been really, really unlucky, I think is the only way to put it. His outcomes should be better than they've been, but he has given up some power and given up a bunch of earned runs in every single game that he's pitched. I haven't picked on this Milwaukee team a bunch. All the market's very high on him. I'm showing his ownership similar to that of Charlie Morton.
Yeah.
And it's scary because he hasn't pitched well, and you're sort of wondering at this point, was last year a fluke, or is the early start to this season a fluke, and he should have better outcomes moving forward?
I think it's probably somewhere in between.
I think so, too. I think I'm going to lean on the market side here, where they expect him to go 6. They expect him to get 6+ strikeouts. And on the other side with Gasser, remember, the Cubs were the other team in that Sunday Night Baseball game. So the Cubs finish a game late last night, head out on the road, fly into Milwaukee. Gasser is tough because, he's got a 9% strikeout rate, 8.5% strikeout rate. Not very exciting, but on a slate where we may lose a couple of arms due to weather, and we don't feel comfortable about some other arms due to potential weather or matchup, at 7,100, I guess you could do worse. So he probably stays in the pool, but he's definitely not a core play for me on the slate.
Yeah. We made it to the end of the slate. I was a little bit worried this was going to happen where I think a lot of slates people watching, know kind of who I'm on for pitching.
Yeah.
I would understand people watching are like, all right, well, who do you actually like, DC?
Well, I think you've got a couple. Go ahead with your pool.
No, I really don't. No. I got a couple minutes to find someone, because we will do, of course, how we end every show: stats, pitchers, home runs, and favorite offensive player. So the first one's easy. Favorite stacks, favorite contrarian stack. Do you have yours ready, JT? Favorite stack, favorite contrarian stack?
Yeah, I think the Reds are going to be my favorite stack here. They're actually showing, potentially due to the Coors Field game and the Toronto game against Nostrini, a bit lower ownership. So I think my Reds are going to be, not my Reds, but the Reds are going to be one of my favorite stacks today. Contrarian stack is, I guess I'll go with the Rockies. The Rockies are going to come in at pretty low ownership.
I'll join you on the Rockies on the contrarian part. Favorite overall stack, though, I think I'm going to actually go with the Orioles. I just don't quite believe in the Cooper Criswell. Obviously, really good hitting conditions. Pay attention to that weather in Baltimore. Not completely safe, but assuming it looks okay for bats at least. I like those Orioles lefties. I think they're going to do some damage with really, really good hitting conditions in Baltimore. Most important pitcher, JT. Take your time on this one. I'm still scrolling, still researching. Maybe I can find one in the 1 minute you're going to give me here.
So I'll just go through. Look, I think at the higher ownership levels, I think Joe Ryan is a bit of a concern due to weather and the fact that he's been inconsistent. I think Morton's a little bit of a concern for a different reason. The gameplay is fine here. It's the Nationals don't really strike out that much. So do I think he's going to get 17 to 20? I think he's probably fine. The guy who's intriguing is Nick Lodolo, and right around 10% ownership. It looks like the Cardinals are going to be pretty popular on this slate as well because they've been hitting, but they've been doing a lot of that damage against right-handed pitchers and really against bad right-handed pitching. Lodolo is a top-tier pitcher. By the numbers, he has the best numbers of any pitcher on this slate, and there's nothing concerning in his underlying metrics. It's not that he's getting lucky. He's got a 31% strikeout rate. So assuming he starts, because we do have, I've seen nothing, DC, like you, no news to indicate that anything's changed from when they said they expected him back on Monday starting in this game against the Cardinals. He's going to be a pitcher that I'm going to be heavily reliant on this slate.
I'm going to join you. You mentioned Nick Lodolo. I think he'll be my highest owned pitcher today. You mentioned we were worried about the pitch count. I think legitimately so. In that first start of the year, he did miss the first couple of weeks
season,
there,
right? Yeah.
But then through 91 pitches, his first time out against the White Sox. I've always been a Lodolo guy, and on a slate where I don't like pitching in general, it kind of makes sense to lean on a guy I know, right? I know is super talented, can get the strikeouts. Like you said, the numbers look good. And just gotta hope for the health, hope for a good amount of pitches, and hope we can keep the ball in the yard. Obviously, that's a big worry with the extreme hitting conditions in Cincinnati. But I'm with you in on Lodolo. Let's get a home run call, JT. Plenty of bats to pick from on this one. Who's going yard today?
This guy's been on fire, and people aren't really playing him a lot. Spencer Steer. I just think it's a great matchup for Spencer Steer. The power that Lynn gives up, I think it's possible you see a couple of guys on base when he does it too.
Spencer Steer. I will go with Mr. Ryan O'Hearn. It's a hero for me on Saturday. Maybe you can do it again tonight against Cooper Criswell. I really do like these Orioles lefties. Favorite overall play on the slate? I'll go with this one in case you steal it. Mr. Ellie De La Cruz, come on down against Pat Lance-Lynn. Who you got, JT, for your overall favorite hitter on the slate?
I'll take another guy who's been absolutely on fire, finally started to heat up. He wasn't playing poorly, but I do think this sets up as a nice game stack here. Ryan McMahon, 4,800.
Love it. Love McMahon today. That'll do it for this show. We appreciate all you guys watching. Hopefully you guys all have an awesome Memorial Day. Stay safe. Enjoy those drinks, baseball, whatever you're doing today. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't done so. And this show will be back, of course, at the usual time tomorrow, 4:45 Eastern Time, talking baseball with Stevie Boyden, whose birthday today, by the way. Happy birthday, Steve, if you're watching.
Happy birthday to Steve.
And, yeah, that'll do it for JT Hayes. I am Giraffe Cheat. We're out of here.